The wrench slipped from Ray's greasy fingers and clattered against the metal floor. He cursed it under his breath and wiped the sweat from his forehead, leaving another dark smear across his skin. The mining equipment on Dust Ridge never stayed fixed for long. Sand got into everything, wore down every moving part, turned simple repairs into daily battles. Ray gathered his tools and stuffed them into his worn canvas bag. His shift had ended an hour ago, but the hauler wouldn't run itself back to the depot. Now, with the twin suns finally setting behind the jagged mountains, he could head home. He took his usual path through the wasteland, a rocky stretch that cut 15 minutes off the walk back to the colony quarters. The landscape looked like something from an old nightmare. Red stones jutted up at strange angles, and the wind made hollow sounds as it moved through the canyons. Ray had lived here for 3 years, and the emptiness still got to him sometimes. Back on Earth, he'd grown up surrounded by forests and rivers. Here, nothing grew except strange purple moss that stuck to the rocks and smelled like burnt rubber. He was halfway across the waste when he heard it. A low, pained growl that didn't sound like any machine he knew. Ray stopped walking and listened. There it was again, coming from somewhere to his left, near one of the abandoned mining pits that dotted the area like old wounds. Ray knew better than to investigate strange sounds in the wilderness. The colony had strict rules about that. Dust Ridge had wildlife, and most of it wanted to eat you. But something about the sound pulled at him. It wasn't aggressive. It was desperate. He approached the pit carefully, his boots crunching on loose gravel. The growling got louder, mixed now with small whimpering noises. Ray peered over the edge and felt his stomach drop. A young animal lay trapped under a fallen support beam, one of the old metal structures left behind when the pit was abandoned. The creature was unlike anything Ray had seen up close before. It looked like a large cat, maybe the size of a medium dog, with a long tail and powerful legs. But its fur was completely white, so pale it almost glowed in the fading light. Blood matted the fur around its hind leg, and Ray could see the limb was bent at a wrong angle. Ray recognized the species from the safety briefings: Valthran, mountain cats that grew to enormous sizes and hunted in packs. The miners called them ghost leopards because they moved so quietly you never heard them until it was too late. Adults could tear through a pressure suit with their claws. The colony had lost 2 people to Valthrans last year. This one was young, probably separated from its pack. And it was dying. Ray should have walked away. Should have reported it to colony security and let them handle it. Instead, he found himself climbing down into the pit, his tool bag bouncing against his hip. The young Valthran watched him approach with pale blue eyes. It tried to growl, but the sound came out weak and pitiful. Its white fur was covered in dust and blood, and Ray could see it shaking from pain and fear. "Easy now," Ray said softly, even though he knew the creature couldn't understand him. "I'm not going to hurt you." He set down his bag and pulled out his heaviest pry bar. The support beam was old steel, rusted and heavy. Ray wedged the bar underneath it and pushed down with all his weight. The beam shifted slightly and the Valthran cried out. I know, Ray muttered, sweat running down his face. "Just hold on." He repositioned the bar and tried again. This time the beam lifted enough for the creature to pull its injured leg free. It immediately tried to stand, but the broken limb couldn't support any weight. The Valthran collapsed with a pitiful sound that made Ray's chest ache. Ray knelt down slowly, keeping his movements gentle and predictable. The creature's ears flattened against its head, but it was too exhausted to do more than watch him with those strange blue eyes. Ray pulled off his work jacket and carefully wrapped it around the small body, pinning the injured leg as gently as he could. The Valthran weighed less than he expected. Ray climbed out of the pit with the bundle in his arms, feeling the rapid heartbeat through the fabric. By the time he reached his workshop on the edge of the colony, full darkness had fallen. Ray's workshop was separate from his living quarters, a small building where he kept his personal tools and worked on side projects. Nobody would look for him here. He laid the injured creature on his workbench and unwrapped the jacket carefully. The hind leg was definitely broken, the bone visible through torn skin. Ray had set bones before on himself and other miners when they were too far from the medical center. He'd never done it for an animal, especially not one that could grow up to kill him. But he couldn't stop now. He cleaned the wound with water from his canteen and antiseptic from his first aid kit. The Valthran whimpered but didn't try to bite him. Ray straightened the leg as carefully as he could and used metal splints meant for industrial cables to hold it in place. He wrapped everything with clean cloth and gave the creature water from his cupped hand. The white cat drank desperately, then collapsed onto the workbench, exhausted. Ray sat in his chair and watched it breathe. What was he doing? This creature would grow into something dangerous. Keeping it was against every rule the colony had, but those blue eyes had looked at him with something he recognized. The need to survive. The hope that someone might help. Ray pulled a blanket over the sleeping Valthran and made himself a promise. 3 days. He'd keep it alive for 3 days, let it heal enough to survive, then release it back to the wild. 3 days wouldn't hurt anything. He named it Ghost, because of its white fur and because he told himself it would disappear like one. 7 years changed everything about Dust Ridge except the dust itself. The colony had grown from a few hundred workers to nearly 3,000. New buildings sprawled across the flatlands, connected by covered walkways and transport tubes. The mining operations had expanded into 3 separate sites, each one pushing deeper into the mountains where the valuable minerals hid. Beneath ancient stone. Ray stood in the main hangar bay, watching his crew work on a massive drill rig that had broken down during the morning shift. He was lead mechanic now, responsible for keeping every piece of heavy equipment running across all 3 sites. The promotion had come with better pay, a larger workspace, and more headaches than he could count. The hydraulic pump is completely shot, called Tisk, one of his Corthan workers. The insect-like alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, with 4 arms that made complex repairs look easy. We need to replace the whole assembly. Ray climbed up the scaffold to get a better look. The pump housing was cracked clean through, leaking fluid everywhere. How long to swap it out? 4 hours if we have the parts. 6 if we need to fabricate something. We have the parts, Ray said. He'd learned to keep a well-stocked inventory after too many delays waiting for supply ships. Get Pell to help you. I want this rig operational by tomorrow morning. Tisk's antenna twitched in acknowledgement, and Ray climbed back down. His office was a glass-walled room overlooking the hangar floor. He settled into his chair and started working through the maintenance reports from all 3 sites. The screens showed a dozen machines in various states of disrepair. It never ended. His communicator buzzed. Ray, this is Site 3. We've got another hauler down. Something tore through the cargo bed last night. Ray felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Wildlife. Looks like it. Big claw marks, same as the others. That made 5 attacks this month. The Valthrans were getting bolder, coming closer to the mining sites, causing more damage. 2 months ago, a pack had ambushed a survey team 5 miles from the main colony. 2 humans died before the rest could reach their vehicles. 3 more were badly injured, spending weeks in the medical center while their bodies tried to heal from wounds that went bone deep. The colony administration had hired professional hunters after that. Men and women who traveled between worlds, tracking down dangerous creatures for money. They'd arrived 3 weeks ago with weapons that could drop a charging Valthran at 200 yards. Ray had seen them at the colony bar, trading stories about their kills like they were proud of it. I'll send a repair crew this afternoon, Ray told the site supervisor. Keep everyone in pairs until those hunters finish their sweep. He ended the call and stared at his screens without really seeing them. Ray understood why the hunters were necessary. The colony needed to expand, and Valthrans were territorial predators that saw humans as threats. People had died. More would die if nothing changed, but he still thought about ghosts sometimes. Wondered if that young white cat had survived in the wild. If it had found a pack, if it was out there somewhere in those mountains. He'd never told anyone about rescuing it. The secret felt safer kept close. Even after all these years, Ray's home sat on the eastern edge of the colony, a small house with a porch that faced the wilderness. He'd chosen the location deliberately, wanting space between himself and the crowded center where most people lived. His neighbors were a family of felon engineers on one side and an empty lot on the other. That evening, he sat on his porch with a cold drink and watched the sun set behind the mountains. The sky turned purple and orange, colors that still surprised him even after 7 years. Back on Earth, sunsets were pink and red. Here, everything looked slightly alien, slightly wrong. Tisk had called him a hermit once, laughing with that clicking sound Corthans made when they were amused. Maybe it was true. Ray had friends at work, people he trusted with his life when things went wrong in the field. But he didn't need constant company. The quiet suited him. A sound in the darkness made him look up. Probably just the wind moving through the rocks. The wilderness pressed close here, close enough that he could hear it breathing at night. Most colonists found that unsettling. Ray found it honest. At least the wilderness didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. His communicator buzzed again. A message from the administration building, marked urgent. Ray opened it and felt his stomach sink. All personnel, be advised that increased Valthran activity has been confirmed within colony boundaries. Professional hunting teams will begin active elimination protocols tomorrow at dawn. All non-essential personnel are required to remain within safe zones until the threat is neutralized. Report any sightings immediately to colony security. Ray read the message twice. Elimination protocols. That meant they weren't just protecting the mining sites anymore. They were going to track down every Valthran pack within 50 miles and kill them all. He stood up and walked to the edge of his porch, looking out at the dark mountains. Somewhere out there, Ghost might still be alive, might have a pack of its own, might be one of the creatures the hunters were planning to eliminate. Ray told himself it didn't matter. Ghost was a wild animal, probably didn't even remember him. 7 years was a lifetime for a creature like that. It had moved on, and so had he. The smart thing was to stay out of it, let the hunters do their job, and focus on keeping the colony's equipment running, but the knot in his chest wouldn't loosen. He went inside and tried to sleep, but his dreams were full of white fur and pale blue eyes, and the sound of desperate whimpering in an abandoned pit. When morning came, Ray went to work like nothing was wrong. He supervised repairs, checked inventory, and responded to maintenance calls. He did his job, but part of his mind was somewhere else, counting down the hours until the hunters entered the mountains with their powerful weapons and their quotas to fill. The scratching sound came just after sunset, soft but persistent. Ray looked up from the engine schematic he'd been studying and listened. There it was again, like something dragging claws across his front door. He stood slowly, his heart suddenly beating faster. The colony had been on edge for weeks, ever since the attacks increased. Everyone jumped at shadows now. Ray crossed his small living room and checked the security screen beside the door. The camera showed his porch, but the light was failing. Making everything gray and unclear, the scratching came again. More insistent this time, Ray pulled on his boots and grabbed the heavy flashlight he kept by the door. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was better than nothing. He opened the door carefully and raised the flashlight. His thumb on the switch, a Valthran sat on his porch. Ray's breath caught in his throat. The creature was massive, easily as tall as his chest at the shoulder. Its fur was pure white, glowing almost silver in the last light of day. Pale blue eyes watched him without blinking. The tail, thick as Ray's arm, lay curled around powerful haunches. This was how people died. Fast and bloody, before they could even scream, but the Valthran didn't move. It sat there calmly, head slightly tilted, making a low rumbling sound in its chest. Not a growl. Something else. Something that made Ray think of the old Earth cats he'd known as a child. The ones that purred when they were content. Ray took a shaky breath and looked closer. The creature's hind leg, the right one, had scars running across the fur. Old scars faded to pale lines. And there, just visible beneath the white fur, were marks that looked like they'd been made by metal. The kind of marks that splints might leave. Ghost? Ray whispered. The Valthran's ears perked up. It made that rumbling sound again and slowly stood. Ray fought the urge to run. The creature was enormous, built with muscle and power that could tear him apart without effort. But it moved carefully, deliberately, keeping its posture low and non-threatening. Ghost approached step by step. Ray's hand trembled as he extended it, palm down. The way he'd learned to approach animals back on Earth, the great white head lowered and pressed against his palm. The fur was softer than he expected, and warm. The purring sound grew louder, deep enough that Ray felt it vibrating through his bones. "It's really you," Ray said. His voice shook. "You came back?" Ghost stayed there for several minutes, leaning against Ray's hand with its eyes half closed. Then it pulled away and moved to the corner of the porch, settling down with its tail wrapped around its body. Just sitting there, watching him with those pale eyes, Ray stood frozen, his mind racing. This didn't make sense. Valthrons were territorial predators. They didn't form bonds with other species. They certainly didn't remember individual humans after 7 years. But here was Ghost, fully grown and powerful, sitting on his porch like it belonged there. "I don't have much food," Ray said, feeling foolish for talking to a creature that couldn't understand him. "But I can get you something." He went inside, leaving the door open, and rummaged through his kitchen. He found some preserved meat from his rations and brought it outside. Ghost sniffed at the offering and ate delicately, far more carefully than Ray expected from such a large predator. They sat together as darkness fell completely. Ray settled into his porch chair while Ghost lay nearby, occasionally making that deep purring sound. The moons rose, casting blue light across the wasteland. Ray should have been terrified. Instead, he felt something like peace. After about an hour, Ghost stood and stretched. The creature approached Ray one more time, pressing its massive head against his leg briefly, then turned and disappeared into the darkness. Ray sat there long after, listening to the night sounds, trying to convince himself it had really happened. Ghost came back the next evening. And the next. Always at dusk, always calm and gentle. Ray started setting aside portions of his meals, real meat instead of the processed rations most colonists ate. He began to look forward to those visits, to the companionship that asked nothing of him except presence. On the 5th visit, Ray examined the old injury more closely. Ghost allowed him to touch the scarred leg, to feel where the bone had healed slightly crooked. "I'm sorry I didn't do a better job," Ray murmured. "I was just a mechanic with a first aid kit." Ghost's tail swished once, and the purring continued. Ray knew he should report this. Colony security would want to know that a Valthran was coming to the settlement. They'd send the hunters. They'd kill Ghost without hesitation. But Ray couldn't make himself do it. This creature had traveled miles to find him, had remembered him across 7 years. That meant something. That meant Ghost was more than just a dangerous animal. The visits became routine. Ray would finish his shift, grab food from the canteen, and head home. Ghost would appear as the sun set, and they'd sit together for an hour or two. Sometimes Ray talked, telling Ghost about his day, about the problems at work, about the news from Earth he got in occasional messages from his family. Ghost would listen, those pale eyes watching him with an intelligence that made Ray's chest ache. One evening, Tisk called while Ghost was there. Ray answered carefully, keeping his body between the camera and the porch. "Hey boss, I wanted to ask about tomorrow's schedule." "Send it in a message," Ray said, trying to keep his voice normal. "I'm in the middle of something. You okay?" "You sound weird." "I'm fine." "Just tired?" After he ended the call, Ray looked at Ghost. "This can't last," he said quietly. "Someone's going to find out? And when they do, they'll come for you." Ghost just purred and rested its enormous head on its paws, completely trusting. Ray realized with a sinking feeling that he'd do anything to protect this creature. Anything at all. The emergency siren woke Ray at 3 in the morning. He stumbled out of bed and checked his communicator, already knowing it was bad. Emergency sirens meant casualties. The message was short and brutal. A mining team had been ambushed 15 miles from the colony. 2 dead, 3 injured. The survivors had barely made it back to their transport. The Valthrans had come in a coordinated pack, attacking from multiple directions. One miner described at least 8 of the creatures working together. Far more than anyone had seen before. Ray dressed quickly and headed to the hangar. Even at this hour, the place was chaos. Medical transports were being prepped to retrieve the injured. Security teams gathered weapons and armor. The colony director stood in the center of it all, his face grim and angry. "This ends now," the director said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've authorized unlimited resources for the hunting teams. Every Valtharan within 50 miles gets eliminated. I don't care if it takes a month. I want them gone." People nodded and muttered agreement. Ray stayed quiet, feeling sick. 2 people were dead. Good people with families waiting for them back on Earth or other colonies. The Valtharans were dangerous. He knew that. But the image of Ghost sitting peacefully on his porch wouldn't leave his mind. Over the next 3 days, the professional hunters mobilized with military efficiency. They brought in additional equipment from their ship, including tracking drones and long-range sensors. Ray watched them work from his office, seeing the way they moved with absolute confidence. These were people who'd hunted dangerous creatures on a dozen different worlds. To them, Valtharans were just another job. The lead hunter, a woman named Carla with scars across her neck, stopped by the hangar to requisition some equipment. Ray helped her load sensor equipment onto a transport sled. "We've located 3 major pack territories," Carla said, checking her datapad. "The biggest concentration is in the canyon systems about 20 miles northwest. We'll hit that one first. Should be able to contain and eliminate them within 2 days once we get in position." "Contain and eliminate," Ray repeated. "You make it sound clean." Carla looked at him with hard eyes. "It's as clean as it can be. These things killed 2 of your people and injured 3 more. Would you prefer we let them keep attacking?" Ray didn't answer. He finished loading the equipment and went back to his office, his stomach churning. Ghost didn't come that evening. Or the next. Ray sat on his porch both nights, waiting, but the darkness stayed empty. He told himself it was better this way, safer. If Ghost stayed away, stayed hidden in the mountains, maybe it would survive. On the 3rd day, Tisk cornered him in the hangar. The Corthan's antennae were twitching with concern. "Boss, you've been acting strange." "What's going on?" "Nothing. Just tired. You're lying." Tisk moved closer, lowering his voice. "I've worked with you for 4 years. I know when something's bothering you. Talk to me." Ray looked around to make sure they were alone. "If I tell you something, can you keep it quiet?" "Depends what it is." Ray took a breath. "I've been visited by a Valtharan for the past 3 weeks. It comes to my house every evening." Tisk's antenna went completely still. "You're joking?" "I'm not. It's one I helped years ago, when it was injured. It came back. I know how it sounds, but I swear it's true." "Ray, that's insane. Those things are killing people." "I know. But this one isn't. It just sits with me. It's peaceful. It remembers me, Tisk. After 7 years, it came back because it remembered." Tisk was quiet for a long moment. "And now the hunters are going into the mountains?" "Yeah." "Does this Valtharan have a pack?" "I don't know. Maybe it always comes alone." Tisk's antenna started moving again, the way they did when he was thinking hard. "This is dangerous information, boss. If security finds out you've been harboring contact with one of these creatures, they'll arrest you." "Maybe worse." "I know. But you're going to do something stupid anyway, aren't you?" Ray met his friend's eyes. "I have to. I can't just let them kill Ghost without trying to do something." "Ghost?" "That's what I call it. Look, I know it sounds crazy, but something's wrong here. The Valtharans only started attacking when we pushed deeper into their territory. 3 years ago, we stayed in the valleys and they stayed in the mountains. Everyone was fine. Now we're mining in their breeding grounds and we're surprised they're defending themselves?" Tisk considered this. "You think they're intelligent?" "I think they're more than we give them credit for. And I think wiping them out is wrong." That evening, Ghost finally returned. But something was different. The great white cat was agitated, pacing back and forth across Ray's porch, making distress sounds that weren't quite growls. Ghost kept looking toward the mountains, then back at Ray, then at the mountains again. Ray understood. Ghost was trying to communicate, trying to tell him something was wrong. "The hunters," Ray said. "They're coming for your pack, aren't they?" Ghost made a sharp sound and pressed against Ray's legs, nearly knocking him over. The creature was scared. Ray had never seen it scared before. "I don't know what to do," Ray said, his voice breaking. "I'm just one person. How can I stop this?" Ghost looked up at him with those pale blue eyes, and Ray saw something there that shattered his heart. Trust. After everything, Ghost still trusted him to help. Still believed that the human who'd saved it once could save it. Again, Ray made a decision that would change everything. He went inside and accessed his work computer, pulling up files he wasn't supposed to see. The hunters' tracking data was there, showing exactly where they'd located the Valthram packs. The main concentration was in the Northwest Canyon system. The hunters planned to use explosives to seal off the escape routes, then sweep through with their weapons. It wasn't hunting. It was extermination. Ray copied everything to a data chip and put it in his pocket. Then he sent a message to 3 people he trusted, Tisk, Pell, and one of the human mechanics named Robert, who'd always seemed uncomfortable with the hunting operation. The message was simple. "I need your help with something. Something that might get us in trouble? Meet me at my workshop in 1 hour if you're willing." He hit send and looked at Ghost, who waited on the porch like a patient sentinel. "I hope this works," Ray said quietly. "Because if it doesn't, we're both dead." All 3 of them came. Tisk arrived first, followed by Pell with his tentacles tucked nervously against his small body, and finally Robert looking uncomfortable but determined. They gathered in Ray's workshop while Ghost waited outside in the shadows. Ray showed them the data chip. "The hunters are moving into the Northwest Canyons tomorrow at dawn. They're going to trap the largest Valthran pack and eliminate them. I need your help to stop it." Robert's eyes went wide. "Stop it, Ray? People died? Those things are dangerous." "I know they're dangerous. But look at this." Ray pulled up maps on his computer screen. "Every single attack happened in territory we moved into this year. 3 years ago, we stayed below the valley line and there were no problems. We pushed into their breeding grounds and now we're surprised they're fighting back." Pell's tentacles rippled with thought. "You're saying they're defending territory? Like any intelligent species would?" "Exactly. And I think they're more intelligent than we realize." Ray took a breath. "I saved a young Valthran 7 years ago. It was injured and I fixed it up and let it go. 3 weeks ago, it came back. It found me, Tisk. After 7 years, it remembered and came looking for me." "That's impossible," Robert said. "I've seen it," Tisk said quietly. "It's been visiting Ray's house." I didn't believe it either until he told me. Ray continued. "This creature shows intelligence, memory, the ability to recognize individuals across years. And we're about to wipe out its entire species because we're too stubborn to admit we're the ones invading their home? What do you want us to do?" Pell asked. "I need to buy time. If I can delay the hunters for just a few days, I can go to the colony director with evidence. Show him that these creatures are more than animals. But I need the hunters' equipment to malfunction. Nothing permanent. Just enough to slow them down." "That's sabotage," Robert said. "That's a criminal offense, I know." Ray looked at each of them. "I'm not asking you to do this lightly. We could lose our jobs. We could face charges. But I can't stand by and watch an intelligent species get exterminated because we're too proud to back off." They were quiet for a long moment. Finally, Tisk's antenna twitched. "I'm in. If these creatures are smart enough to remember kindness after 7 years, they deserve a chance." Pell rippled his agreement. "My people nearly went extinct once because another species thought we were just animals. I won't let that happen to another race." Robert looked sick but nodded. "My kids back on Earth would be ashamed if they knew I stood by and did nothing. Tell us what you need." They worked through the night. Ray knew the hunter's equipment better than anyone, having helped load it. The tracking drones used a specific power coupling that would burn out if exposed to too much current. The transport vehicles had hydraulic systems that could be temporarily disabled by removing a single valve. Nothing that would hurt anyone. Nothing that couldn't be fixed. Just enough to create delays. At 2 in the morning, they split up. Tisk and Pell went to the drone storage facility. Robert and Ray headed to the transport bay. They moved carefully, avoiding security cameras, using Ray's access codes to get into restricted areas. Ray's hands shook as he worked on the first transport. He'd never broken rules before, never done anything that could be called sabotage. But every time he hesitated, he thought of Ghost's eyes, full of trust and fear. By 4 in the morning, they'd finished. 6 transport vehicles disabled. 12 tracking drones with burnt-out power couplings. Enough damage to delay the hunting operation by at least 2 days. Maybe 3. They met back at Ray's workshop, exhausted and terrified. "What now?" Robert asked. "Now I go to the director," Ray said. "I try to make him understand, and if he doesn't listen, then at least I tried." Ghost was still waiting when Ray got home. The great white cat seemed to understand that something had changed. It pressed close to Ray, making worried sounds. "I did what I could," Ray told it. "Now you need to run? Take your pack and go deep into the mountains. Please, Ghost, I bought you time, but you need to use it." Ghost looked at him for a long moment, then did something Ray had never seen before. The creature lowered its head and touched its forehead to Ray's chest, holding there for several heartbeats. Then it turned and ran into the darkness, faster than Ray had ever seen it move. Ray spent the rest of the night preparing his case. He gathered every piece of evidence he could find about Valthran behavior. He documented Ghost's visits, his own observations, the patterns of attacks correlating with human expansion. By the time the suns rose, he had a presentation that might convince the director, or might get him thrown in prison. At 8 in the morning, alarms started blaring across the colony. Ray's communicator exploded with messages. The hunting equipment had been sabotaged. The director was demanding answers. Security was reviewing all access logs. Ray knew he had hours at most before they traced it back to him. He grabbed his data chip and headed for the administration building. The director's office was chaos. Carla was there, furious about the delays. Security officers were pulling access records. Ray walked in and everyone stopped talking. "I need to speak with you," Ray told the director. "About the Valthrans. About why we're making a mistake." The director's face went red. "You have some nerve showing up here. Security just flagged your access codes at the transport bay last night." "I know. I was there. I'm the one who disabled the equipment." The room went silent. Carla's hand moved toward her weapon. Security officers stepped forward. Ray held up the data chip. "Before you arrest me, I need you to see something. Please, just 5 minutes. If you still want to arrest me after that, I'll go peacefully." The director looked ready to refuse. Then something in Rai's face made him pause. 5 minutes. Then you're going to a cell." Ray plugged in the chip and started his presentation. He showed them everything. The patterns of attacks. The correlation with human expansion. Ghost's return after 7 years. The evidence of intelligence and memory. He spoke clearly, knowing this was his only chance. "These aren't just animals," Ray finished. "They're a species that remembers kindness, that shows loyalty across years. And we're about to wipe them out because we refuse to admit we're the invaders? I'm asking you to reconsider. Create buffer zones. Pull back from their breeding grounds. Give them a chance." The director stared at him. "You sabotaged a safety operation because of one friendly animal?" "I sabotaged it because it was wrong. And I'd do it again." Arrest him," the director said. The colony holding cell was small and cold. Ray sat on the metal bench and stared at the gray walls, wondering if he'd just destroyed his entire life for nothing. Security had arrested Tisk, Pell, and Robert too. The 4 of them were being held separately while the colony administration decided what charges to file. 3 days passed. Ray got meals delivered through a slot and had no contact with anyone except the guards who brought his food. He thought about Ghost constantly, hoping the white cat had taken its pack deep into the mountains, far beyond the hunter's reach. On the fourth day, everything changed. The guard opened Ray's cell and told him he had a hearing. Ray was escorted to the administration building, expecting to face formal charges. Instead, he found the main conference room packed with people. Colonists he knew from work. Alien workers from all 3 mining sites. Even some of the hunters stood in the back. The director sat at the head of the table, looking exhausted. Beside him sat a woman Ray didn't recognize, wearing the insignia of the Galactic Conservation Union. "Ray Carter," the director said. "You've caused quite a situation here." "I understand that, sir." "No, I don't think you do." "Sit down." Ray sat. Tisk was already there, along with Pell and Robert. They looked as confused as Ray felt. The director gestured to the woman. "This is Dr. Amara Stone. She's a xenobiologist who specializes in potentially intelligent species. After your arrest, several of your coworkers filed formal complaints about the hunting operation. They claimed you had evidence of Valthran intelligence that needed to be examined before any extermination proceeded." Ray looked at Tisk, who gave a small nod. His friend had followed through, even from the cell. Dr. Stone leaned forward. "I've reviewed your documentation, Ray. The evidence of long-term memory and individual recognition is fascinating. But I needed to verify it. So I requested a delay in the hunting operation and conducted field observations in the Northwest Canyons." She pulled up images on the main screen. Valthrans moving through the canyons in organized groups. Adults protecting young. Coordinated hunting strategies that showed planning and communication. "These creatures demonstrate complex social structures," Dr. Stone continued. "Tool used for creating dens. Vocal communication patterns that suggest language. And most remarkably, they appear to have cultural knowledge passed between generations. I observed a pack teaching young ones to avoid human equipment by using old mining gear as training obstacles. That's learned behavior, not instinct." The room was silent. Even Carla, the lead hunter, looked uncomfortable. "Your friend," Dr. Stone said to Ray. "The white one you call Ghost? I'd like to meet it, if possible." "I don't know where it is," Ray admitted. "I told it to run. We found tracks near your home. Fresh ones." "It came back last night while you were in custody?" Ray's heart jumped. Ghost had returned. Even with everything happening, it had come back. Dr. Stone stood. "Based on my findings, I'm recommending that Valthrans be reclassified as a potentially sapient species under galactic conservation law. This means all extermination operations must cease immediately. The colony will need to implement protective measures and establish formal contact protocols." The director rubbed his face. "And the attacks? The deaths? Will be investigated as territorial disputes between 2 intelligent species. The same way we'd handle conflicts between human colonies and other spacefaring races. With diplomacy, not extermination." "2 people died," someone said from the crowd. "I know," Dr. Stone replied. "And that's terrible. But humans killed Valthrans too when we moved into their territory. Both sides have suffered losses because we treated this as a wildlife problem instead of a first contact situation. That changes now." The director looked at Ray. "I still don't like what you did. You broke laws. You endangered people by sabotaging safety equipment." "I know, sir. I'm ready to accept the consequences." "The consequences are complicated. Several dozen workers, including multiple alien species, signed a petition supporting your actions. They've requested leniency, citing your evidence about territorial invasion. The Hunters Guild is demanding charges. The Conservation Union is threatening sanctions if we prosecute you for trying to prevent the extinction of a potentially sapient species." The director sighed. "Here's what's going to happen. You're all receiving formal reprimands and suspension without pay for 3 months. You'll also serve community service hours helping establish the new buffer zones. But given the circumstances, I'm not filing criminal charges." Ray felt his shoulders sag with relief. 3 months without pay would hurt, but it wasn't prison. "There's one more thing," Dr. Stone said. I need someone to help establish initial contact with the Valthrans. Someone they might trust? Are you willing? Ray didn't hesitate. Yes, that evening Ray returned home to find Ghost waiting on his porch. But the white cat wasn't alone. Two smaller Valthrans sat nearby, their fur pale gray instead of pure white. Cubs, maybe a year old, watching Ray with curious blue eyes. Ghost approached slowly, making that deep purring sound. Then it did something extraordinary. It gently pushed one of the cubs forward with its nose, encouraging it to approach Ray. Ray knelt down and extended his hand. The cub sniffed carefully, then pressed its small head against his palm. The other cub followed. Ghost watched with what Ray could only describe as pride. "You're teaching them," Ray whispered. "Teaching them that some humans can be trusted." Ghost purred louder and settled on the porch with the cubs between them. They sat together as the sun set, a mechanic and a family of white leopards, building a bridge between species through nothing more complicated than compassion. Over the next 6 months, everything changed. The colony pulled back from the mountain breeding grounds. Buffer zones were established with strict protocols. Dr. Stone's team documented Valthran intelligence, discovering evidence of basic astronomy knowledge in cave paintings and complex family structures spanning generations. The attack stopped, not because the Valthrans were gone, but because humans stopped invading their territory. Ray kept his job after the suspension ended. He worked with Dr. Stone's team, helping establish communication protocols. Ghost visited regularly, sometimes bringing other Valthrans to meet the human who'd proven that kindness was stronger than fear. One evening, Tisk joined Ray on the porch while Ghost and the cubs lounged nearby. "You changed history, boss. First peaceful contact between humans and Valthrans. They're talking about it across the whole sector." "I just fixed a broken leg," Ray said. "No, you saw intelligence where everyone else saw a monster? That's not small." Ray watched Ghost playing gently with the cubs and smiled. He was still just a mechanic, still lived in a small house on the edge of nowhere. But that one choice 7 years ago to help a scared, injured creature had rippled outward, changing how two species saw each other. The galaxy was vast and full of unknowns. But Ray had learned something important. The smallest act of compassion could echo across years and species, building bridges where others only saw walls. And sometimes, the most important thing a person could do was simply choose to help, even when it made no logical sense. Ghost caught his eye and made that rumbling purr. Ray reached out and scratched behind the great cat's ears, feeling the trust that had taken years to build but only a moment of kindness to begin. Outside the porch light, the mountains stood dark and mysterious, full of life that humans were only beginning to understand. But here, in this small circle of light, two species sat together in peace. And that, Ray thought, was enough.